Good evening. I'd like to call the Wednesday, January 24th, 2024 Douglas Planning Board meeting to order. Time is 7 p.m. If you just go around the table and just state your name for the minute taker. Jacob Schultzberg, Chair.
Meg Schlesman.
Aaron Sokrat.
Rich Preston.
Mike Greco.
Mike Zwicker.
Matthew Benoit, Community Development Director.
Brandon Fanoff, Conservation Commission Agent.
Samantha Peru, Ecosystem Solutions.
Thank you.
Welcome.
First item on the agenda, A&Rs. We have one for 342 Maple Street / U Street, Tatro. Anyone here or online for that?
I don't know if anyone's here, Mr. Chairman, but I did review the A&R. It does meet the requirements. The scale, I thought, was a little big, and I asked them to split this into two plans, but they're within their right to submit it as is, and it does check all the boxes for our A&R and our lot reduction, reduced frontage lot requirement.
They're doing a total of 5 lots? Okay.
2 on Maple Street and 3 on U Street.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there an upland requirement? A contiguous upland requirement in Douglas? No. Because it looks like there are wetlands, and I'm just, for my own edification, as I, ramp up in this position. Some towns have requirements for, you have to have so many acres of contiguous, or, some towns have to have what I call a 60-40 rule. It has to be at least 60% uplands versus, no more than 40% wetlands in order to be able to subdivide. Are there any such requirements? Okay.
I just have a question. I don't know if we can bring up the map of where this is, but I don't believe Martin Road just straight up turns into U Street. I think they come together at like a Y intersection. I think Martin Road ends and U Street kind of comes around a corner. I don't think Martin Road just straight turns into U Street.
I'm not sure.
You passed?
That's the town line.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, that's Martin Road, Uxbridge, maybe?
Right, that's what I mean, that's the town line right
Yeah.
there. Go-
Okay. Okay, yeah, that makes,
That makes sense?
yeah.
Yeah, it's the town boundary.
And it's weird because on the other end of U Street, there's Martin Road,
Yeah.
so. Okay, that makes sense now. Any other questions, issues from the board?
Yeah, it looks like
Oh,
Laurel Brook, as soon as it goes over Laurel Brook, it changes road names.
No, that's town line,
Huh?
over here,
Yeah, I was thinking the other end.
wrong side.
Oh, shit. Well, yeah, but on Martin Road is, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Town line, they split.
All right, if no other issues, entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to endorse the A&R for 342 Maple Street, U Street.
Made by Mr. Zwicker, second by Mr. Greco. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All set. Do we have plans for that, Matt, to sign?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Public hearings, there are no public hearings scheduled for tonight. Additional business, 2023 draft annual report, possible votes. Mr. Benoit, yes.
So every year, we have to do an annual report. It's a requirement for town meeting. The information here is based on permits taken in, and we listed some of the ongoing subdivisions that are under construction, some that are approved. Sutton Douglas residential development is approved, but yet to be constructed, but it's still listed. happy to answer any questions, but that's,
I just have one. I think Mike was already an associate before the new year.
Who?
so we can add him.
Yeah,
Okay.
you need to add Mike,
Okay,
because that's for 2023.
great.
And he was approved, I think, was last December or
Yep.
something like that.
Mike who?
His first meeting was.
Gentleman that was next to you, last meeting.
And
He
Mr.
hasn't been
Benoit,
here all that.
the municipal center roof project, I don't think
What's that
that's
get to?
ours.
Yeah, that's true. We don't have a capital project.
Okay.
Cross that.
Yeah, it's pretty cut and dry as to what it is. Those are the numbers.
That's true.
So I don't think,
We have 3 mics in a row here.
I don't think Mr. DeRose was, attended a meeting until January. His first meeting was our last meeting.
Yeah, but he's an associate member.
Yeah, I think he was sworn in December.
He's sworn in, so that would still make him a member of the
Okay.
board. Even though, not like tonight, he's not here, but he's still a member of the board.
Okay.
Good enough for that draft. Just make the changes and should be it.
Okay. Is there consent?
Consent as amended.
Okay. Maple Heights, Isabella Drive.
So,
Benoit, yes.
So this is, Mr. Stevens is looking to purchase the remaining lot that's held as surety for a road that was part of a subdivision that was under construction. It's part of a homeowners association, and we're holding a lot as surety for the road to be finished. So what's been proposed is a release of the lot so that, and commitment for Mr. Stevens to finish the road prior to receiving an occupancy permit. And it's up to the planning board if they want to consider that occupancy permit sufficient security as a holdover to get the road finished. The form has been reviewed by town council, and he doesn't have an issue with the form that's provided for signature.
So just to give background, talk to
Just,
Les Stevens, 31 Brookside Drive, Douglas. So we've had conversations since October with the Community Development Office as well as the town manager about this, going in this direction. And it was acceptable to kind of go and then bring it to town council to let them review it. The other reason for this is because after the house is built and completed, as we work our way out, it was to top coat the road and stuff like that, so it doesn't get damaged with machinery coming across and stuff like that. But everything's done with the road other than the top coat and 4 bounds that we proposed, that we've discussed at the previous planning board meeting. And then this would finish the subdivision off, which is a private subdivision that's already existing, that's already in place.
And I forget, did we make a decision on the bounds, or were we going to look into that with?
So there was, we talked about doing 4 bounds. I think an initial plan, there's only 3 lots there. The initial plan had proposed like 10 bounds, and it was extremely excessive for 4 lots. So we proposed to put in 4 bounds, which would be perfect for surveying purposes and stuff like that, since the other properties in the backland already have like pins on them. So they're already been pinned out. So it's just the front doesn't have the bounds for the surveyors to start their data.
How would we stand on that? To double check with peer review, or just up to the board?
Discretion of the board.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think Jude's on as well, Gavin, the engineer, who's done all the, because we had to do an assessment where the project is as the as-built and to completion what was left to be done. So he's online as well for any other questions.
Jude, if you could actually just bring that up and just show, confirm where you're looking to put the 4 bounds, so we make a decision on it tonight.
Give me a second, okay?
Yep. And while we're waiting, Jude, we see your name and your company. If you just say who you are and what you work for those listening.
I'm Jude Gobbin, I'm OHI Engineering.
Okay.
So while he's pulling that up, during the, since we've had a couple crazy weather storms and stuff like that, Jude and I have gone up to the site to see if the drainage and everything else is working properly. I mean, before we got too far along in the pipe and stuff like that with the process. But everything operates, better than expected. We were, especially with the heavy rains that we had and stuff like that. So the drainage that's there, even that's private, is all draining correctly and the way it's offsetting and stuff like that. So worked out good.
Findlay Industries.
There you go, guys.
There you go.
All right.
It's actually 6 bounds we're
6 bounds.
proposing, not
Okay.
10.
Yeah.
Sorry, Les.
Yep. Yeah. So it's the ones marked in red, Jude.
Yeah, there's 2 at the beginning of the street to demarcate the
Yeah.
entrance points, and then there's 2 inside, and there's 2 at the throat of the cul-de-sac.
Yep.
And that's double the amount that you really typically need to pull a survey off of. Usually you're looking for three bounds, and we're gonna put in 6 on a 3-lot subdivision, so it seems sufficient to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Board consensus, any issues with the 6 as proposed?
I have no problem with that.
I have no problem either.
Sorry.
And then the release of the covenant. Anyone have any issues or questions with the wordage or going about doing it this way?
Was reviewed by town council, he has no problem with it. So as long as the bounds are in, which for the as-built need to be there in order to get occupancy.
Right, and if I may, through the chair, the applicant did say that he would hold up the the certificate of occupancy will not be issued until the road work is complete. So at least it gets him in parallel, starting to release that lot, so he can move along, and it's a win-win if he gets, I'm all for that.
Which is in the wording of the covenant.
Good.
So,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I think Matt brought up as well as the other Matt Wolzek was the homeowners association's already in place and stuff like that. So that was one of the items that we addressed to make sure that was in place. So that's it.
All right, so one motion or 2 separate? Okay. If someone wants to, for a motion for the release of the covenant as written and for the 6 bounds to be installed as,
So moved.
Second.
okay. Motion made by Mr. Zwicker, seconded by Mr. Sokrat. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain.
1 abstention from Ms. Schlesman.
Thank you.
We'll sign
Thanks for
that.
the time. Appreciate it.
Get that to you.
Hey, Matt,
Yes.
I don't see Hawk Hill on the agenda.
It is
Under ongoing.
ongoing development.
Okay, perfect. Sorry.
Jude, do you have something for that?
The Hawk Hill thing is almost identical to Les's situation.
All right. Let me do the master plan and then I'll get to that. We'll just go down. I'll
Okay.
just wrap up the additional business,
Yep.
which should be very quick.
Yes.
Additional business, master plan.
I didn't make any progress since our last meeting on master plan. I've just been dealing with regular stormwater
Okay.
issues, so
Fair enough.
we didn't make any
Yep.
headway on setting up a meeting yet, so, but we certainly will.
Any word on the board? I think, what was the school committee was the last one?
Yeah, I didn't get any.
Response? Okay.
All right. Moving on to ongoing development with Jude here. I'm just going to skip down to Hawk Hill Farms to discuss that.
Excuse me.
And Ms. Schlesman is going to recuse herself. All right, Jude, you have the floor.
Thank you. Again, my name is Jude Govan from OHI Engineering. I'm the consultant on the Hawk Hill Farms project. Similar to Les's situation, what we're proposing here is there's a small amount of pavement that's proposed. There's 40 feet of pavement, the final coat at the beginning of the road, and there's a row of the arborvitaes that are agreed to be put in along the Anderson property. We're asking for those to wait until the spring or a little bit there later, maybe midsummer, because the Schlesmans want to build their house up on Lot 5. And so what they're asking for is this, it's in lieu of a bond or a release from the covenant, they're saying to hold the certificate of occupancy until such time as the arborvitaes are installed and the final coat of pavement is installed on the beginning of the road. And the other thing is the bounds. I believe there's 21 bounds that were proposed along the road right away, and that's because the road kind of, it mimics the existing driveway that was there, so there's lots of jigs and jogs and turns, so a lot of the bounds are at every single angle point per subdivision, but because this is a private roadway, we were proposing to put them on the side where all the lots are. And I believe it's let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 9 bounds on the project side of the road. The other side is proposed to be untouched. So again, it's similar to the previous one that we just did. Same document, just filled out a little differently for this project.
Do we have the draft covenant? Was it one submitted or anything?
I don't know if it made it into the packet, but I do have it here.
So what happened was we were waiting for town council to give feedback on the last document that was discussed. So he just agreed to it this afternoon or maybe yesterday, as far as I know. So I prepared the one identical to the one he approved and sent it in to Matt today.
Okay. Just give Mr. Benoit a second. Try to pull it up.
I have it.
Sure.
And the arborvitaes I'm fine with. You don't want to risk planting those in the middle of winter.
I mean, I'm fine with the verbiage as per approval of town council, which he probably has, or it's just in transition. With the 9 bounds.
9 or 10?
I think you said 9. You said 9, right?
Yes.
9.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same document. So council is okay with it, so I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Yep.
Just need to print the signature page and have that ready for next meeting.
Or quickly after. maybe.
Yeah.
I'll bring it up,
Okay.
but that'll be for both, I guess.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, so I'll look to come up with a motion for this.
A motion for the approval for the release of covenant on Hawk Hill Farms Road as per signed off by town council with the 9 bounds.
Sounds right. Motion made by Mrs. Wicker, second by Mr. Sokrat. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All set. So we'll work on printing that or
Yep.
getting that signed one way or another.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you, Jude.
Yeah, see you, Jude.
All right, moving along, ongoing development. The Cubes at Gilboa and McIntyre Loom Incorporated, SPR-220215.
So if I may, I'd like to introduce Brandon Spana, who's a conservation agent.
Good evening.
We kind of discuss what's been going on with conservation on this property and the enforcement order and how this might tie into the planning board.
Okay.
How it might tie into the planning board, I'm not quite sure, Mr. Chairman, but I can give you an update of where we are right now.
Yeah, I think an update would be,
Okay.
a quick update of what's going on. We talked about it briefly at our last meeting, that there was an issue over there, and
Yes.
the Conservation Committee had to intervene.
Correct. There was a major erosion and sedimentation event, something I call a blowout, right? So there's a very large, long infiltration basin on the east side of the newly built distribution warehouse. And it's very close to the Uxbridge Douglas Town line. And the property just over the town line in Uxbridge is owned by the town of Douglas. And what happened starting on December 18 storm is that the water filled up the basin and it overtopped the road on the east side of the basin and went down the hill and eroded the slope. And at the bottom of that slope is a wetland. It's in Uxbridge. So the infiltration basin was designed on what's called a hydrologic soil group A soil, which is the soil with the fastest infiltration rate. So they're supposed to be completely dry within 72 hours of receiving precipitation. And it hasn't lost water. It's been holding water since before this, the storms in December. So there's obviously was something wrong. And then we had these storms, and it overtopped, and it ended up taking out I'd say about a third of the road in that spot, in the low spot. And there's a major gully going right down the hill into this wetland. So there's sediment in the wetland, and it's a kind of wetland that fills up with water seasonally. So it's full of water right now, and the water throughout is just, it's soup. It's brown. So right now, JR Vinagro, as of today, was pumping out the water from the wetland so they could get in there starting tomorrow with equipment to start scraping out the silt material that is going into it, to start the restoration process. Douglas and Sutton are taking care of their respective sides, so their Conservation Commission,
Uxbridge.
did I say Uxbridge?
You said
Yeah.
Sutton.
You have two.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, Douglas and Uxbridge on this one.
Automatic pilot. Uxbridge is taking care of the restoration they have a enforcement order on the conservation side in order for them to clean up their end. On the Douglas side, however, there are no wetlands, but it's the source of the problem. So conservation still has a responsibility to help resolve the problem so the wetlands in Uxbridge don't get impacted again. So the actions the Conservation Commission has taken so far is to issue an enforcement order with fines. They fined them $1,400. Basically what they said was, starting tonight, this was a couple of weeks ago, we're going to fine you $200 a day until you come up and submit a restoration plan. And they did. It took them 7 days to do it. So that's, 7 times 200, so it's $1,400. All that's been delivered to them, and they still need to pay it. But The restoration plan is now being, we want it to go out to a civil engineer. We want to make sure, it's not just the cleanup effort in the wetlands, it's what went wrong, why did it go wrong? Was the engineering wrong to begin with? Like, was it not designed correctly? We need confirmation that what Beals Associates, which is the applicant's engineer, is saying is correct, and that they can indeed fix it. We've reached out to Haley Ward to see if they'd be willing to take it on. They had a few questions for us that came through today. So we're in the process, Conservation Commission's in the process of hopefully procuring them through the 53G process and have the applicant pay for them to do a peer review of everything that's going on to date.
Okay.
Yep.
So as far as the planning board, how's the condition of the roadway now? Like the physical condition of the road? Has it been
The road-
repaired, or they need to wait?
They're still working, the roadway's still in pretty rough shape.
Okay.
And in fact, I'm not an engineer, but I personally think that in order to prevent this from happening again, the road should probably be raised, so there's more, you can hold more volume in the basin so it doesn't overtop like it has been. Because it's overtopped a couple of times. But the engineers in the end will make that assessment.
Yeah, and if they make that assessment and we decide that that should be the plan, would that be considered a minor? Because you'd have to change the plan of the whole plan.
Won't until you see it.
Yeah.
Right. Conservation Commission has also asked for an as-built plan to date, like, I guess you call it a progress plan. They want to know, there's not just the infiltration basin, but there are underground infiltration chambers that are 15 feet deep, which we're told are working just fine. But the Conservation Commission wants to know where all of the pipes from the roof, from the catch basins, where are they going to, and what's the catchment for them all, and like as it was actually built, not designed, but like let us know how it was actually built so we can wrap our mind around what's going on and what might have went wrong. And what went wrong, I think, is that the controls on erosion and sedimentation, all the slopes, were not adequately maintained and stabilized. So we had rain events, the sediment goes down into the basin, and maybe the sediment didn't make it all the way down, but the finer materials go into suspension, the smaller particles go into suspension, end up into the basin, and then they settle out, and they make a veneer. It's almost like a clay liner that's pretty much impervious. It's probably what happened. So they have some operations and maintenance to do, construction operation and maintenance to do to dredge that material out and get it draining again at a minimum.
That's a question for the chair, just because you mentioned. Prior to these events, the rain events, you said that 72 hours of things supposed to drain through.
That's how
But
the
it wasn't
design.
prior? It wasn't doing that?
It was.
It was.
So in the fall, I am told that it was. But a frustration the Conservation Commission's been having is they have what's called a stormwater pollution prevention plan. So on the site, any site that's greater than 1 acre, whether you're going to be disturbing at least 1 acre of soil, you have to write one of these things, and it has reporting requirements, and there's a monitor that has to go out at least once every 2 weeks or every 7 days and after a quarter-inch rainstorm. And write these, and make recommendations and give that to the contractor, and the contractor's supposed to address them. Conservation Commission has been frustrated that the consultant, which is SWCA, it's the name of the company, has been doing these inspections and making recommendations since the project began, and the contractor has not been addressing them. The company has not been addressing them. It's almost like they've been considered to be suggestions as opposed to orders. So my job, and as I've been directed, is to be a little more forceful to make sure that the recommendations from these reports actually get listened to and executed. And if not, to lean on the Conservation Commission to do what needs to be done to compel that.
If I can ask one more question, I'm sorry. But the underground units, I was speaking to someone who knows, but it's to take the roof runoff.
Yes, that's what I
You know,
understand
it's a
too.
tremendous amount of area of rain coming off that roof
Yeah.
that goes into these underground retention.
Yeah, it's like 25 acres of roof.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I know.
Do you think that there's any possibility that the amount of water that has been put into these have created a groundwater issue that probably is not going to help the other end drain through? I mean, I know it's so far away, but
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
the
then
volume is incredible.
I understand there might be a groundwater, what we call a mounding problem.
Right, right.
You know, sometimes you need to do a mounding analysis on projects where, you know, you have stormwater and you need to have that 2 feet of separation between the groundwater table and the bottom of your, you know, infiltration practice, and sometimes it mounds up. I don't know, that's a good question, though, that I will bring up.
Okay. Millions of gallons.
Yes. Yep.
All right, so we're,
Question, if
Yep.
I could. You'd mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, that there was erosion from the nearby slopes.
Yes,
The runoff
definitely,
created a clay bed, correct?
more or less.
You think that
In layman's terms.
that made it impervious, the water couldn't percolate through?
Yeah, I'd like to say, is it 100% impervious? No, I'm sure it isn't, but it is definitely significantly slowed down infiltration enough so that it just doesn't drain completely.
Do you know if any controls are going to be in place or should be in place to help control this erosion, so this won't be a repeated thing, where you're going to get runoff and
Right, well,
you're going to get clay once again?
one of the things that really frustrated me, again, is that the contractor, which I understand is JR Vinagro Corp., they were hired as a sub to do the site work. And I've been told that they laid the loom all around the basin and all on the slopes around the project back in the fall. But then the loom never got seeded, which makes no sense to me. So why didn't, you know, if Vinagro is subcontracted to do the site work and the landscaping, why didn't they then do the seeding? It just, you know, those kinds of disconnects, I'm having a hard time with.
It's like it's better if it was riprap, the whole thing.
I believe there's since been some turnover in their operations.
Oh, my God.
Because of that issue.
okay. Is someone on, is it Jeff Murphy, is he their civil engineer? No.
No, he's with Oak Street.
Okay.
It's Beals Associates, not Beals and Thomas. I do that all a lot myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no one on from that project? Okay. So we're going to be waiting for the restoration plan to get reviewed.
Correct, yeah. Like I said, we're soliciting Haley Ward right now, and they're still asking questions, you know, so they can fine tune their proposal.
And are they assessing the basin to see they're obviously working on figuring out what to do. If it's
Yes.
right, wrong, indifferent, they need to, they
Correct.
are working on it.
Correct.
Okay. Do they say anything about what they plan on doing for the slope to?
Well, you know, here are the options. You put down loam at some point during the year and you seed it, and then by the time you get to winter, you get the grass growing, and you can say the slope will stay stable. If that doesn't happen, your other options are erosion control blankets, compost mulch, you know, tackifiers, things like that. And these are things that have to be done, and they haven't been done. Right now, the soil is frozen. How long it's going to be frozen with the rain and the warm-up, we don't know. But these are things that need to be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so once this restoration plan is figured out, we'll have to probably just get them in to figure out what their plan is for the slope stabilization and any other concerns as a result of this for the planning board.
Yeah, I just wanted us to keep an eye on it. The
Yeah.
Conservation Commission's running the enforcement, and they're spearheading the stormwater efforts, so it's a bullshit of enforcement. But I'm not sure. This board's authority is to issue a cease and desist, and that's not what we're looking to do here. We want them to continue
Yeah, get it
the
done.
system, so. Just keep us up to speed, and that's pretty much it.
All right, any other questions, board?
Nope. The only thing that'll matter is what they change the road, and then would be involved in that.
Yeah.
That would be about
Or
it.
change the design.
Yeah. that-
Mr. Benoit, is Pine, Cliff Street, is that a quick thing?
So we do have a draft decision.
I just want to, I don't know if I want to take that quickly now, let
mean,
them get out of here.
I got a lot of the feedback from town council today, and I don't know if the board members have enough time to review the decisions, but
No, we'll talk about that now for, that's under signatures.
right. So we're still looking for a motion for a vote of approval one way or the other.
Okay.
So we're still looking for that, and with conditions, and then we can finalize the conditions with council if the board wishes to go that route.
Was there, they received the conditions already, right?
Yes, we bounced it back and forth with their attorneys and here, so. And the last correspondence I got from their attorney was he was okay with the language in the decision, so.
Okay. All right, so we're at that point where we can make a decision on that, the plan for 93 Cliff Street, and vote on it with the conditions. Board, any questions for 93 Cliff Street?
Just do the conditions as written, or do you want to go through every one?
I think if they're fine with as written and our attorney's fine as written, or,
Andy Leonard, Fine Sand, we're fine as written, if town council's fine.
and their standard conditions with whatever changes they,
Yeah, the conditions come straight out of our bylaw,
Okay.
and so there's, we wrote that piece in.
If I may, through the chair, one of the things presented was that the processing would go inside this building for sound. We liked that. I mean, I think that's my take from last meeting. I want to make sure that that's in there as well.
I can tell you that the Conservation Commission reviewed this project about in December.
Yeah, they issued an order.
the sounds, everything else out with the sound study. Well,
I couldn't quote you, but there's verbiage too, that we have to adhere to federal, state.
Yeah, state.
Yeah.
EPA,
Yep, guidelines.
okay. All right, anyone interested in making a motion for
So there's 3 motions.
3
We're
motions?
looking for,
We
You
don't
want to
have-
read them off, Matt?
Yeah, you have to read them off, because
looking for a motion to approve the special permit pursuant to section 9.3 for the outdoor manufacturing use at 93 and 69 Cliff Street.
you want to do them individually? So moved.
Second.
Made by Mr. Zwicker, seconded by Mr.,
Right there, you got it.
we'll go Mr. Preston on that one. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? All set for that one.
And then we're looking for a motion to approve the earth removal special permit pursuant to section 6.1 and 9.3 of the Douglas zoning bylaws for 93 Cliff Street, 93 and 69 Cliff Street with conditions.
I'll second that. So,
You're going to make it?
I'll
Yep.
make it, so moved.
Second.
Made by Mrs. Becker, second by Mr. Sokrat. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All set?
For a motion to approve the site plan approval under section 9.4 of the zoning bylaw for property at 93 and 69 Cliff Street.
So moved.
Second.
Made by Mr. Preston, second by Mr. Greco. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All set.
Thank you.
Very good, sir. Have a good week.
Signature pages should
We'll sign that and Matt will be in touch, or you'll be in touch with Matt and we'll get it to you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
I always lose my agenda. Any other updates under ongoing development?
No, sir. Just the Blue Wave Solar.
All right, Blue Wave Solar at Oak Street, SPR-200203 and SR-200203.
Mr. Chairman, I recuse myself.
Mr. Zucker recuses. All right. We have a lot of people on. So I just want to get, I know there's been a lot going on with conservation with this. Just want to try to stay focused on, for planning board, but also get a quick update. This is the first time we've had everyone on the, for the planning board in. So if you can just start us off possibly with,
I'll try to keep it
Yeah.
planning board.
and is someone on that can just quickly share the
There-
property?
There, can anyone from the Blue Wave or Mill Creek team share something? And let me know who it is so I can request that that person gets sharing ability.
Just an outline of overview of the property.
Yeah, in fact, that, if you have that draft as-built, that might help as well, Jeff.
Sure. Members of the board, my name is Jeff Murphy, civil engineer with Beals and Thomas on behalf of the applicant, BWC White and Reservoir LLC for the 45 Oak Street solar project. I can pull up a site plan for the reference of the board. Okay, a second here. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, I guess overall site plan, the site, you know, I think most people are familiar with the location of the site,
Okay.
off of Oak Street here.
Brandon, is that showing enough of the property to show
It
what?
shows the front half, so
Okay.
there's a second sheet showing the back half.
Okay.
So this is the entrance at Oak Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might be able to call up just an overall, just aerial view of the site.
Yeah, even just,
Kind of just like a site context, right here. Oak Street is generally to the west of the site. Just have a few things turned off here, but, so the entrance to the project is located just to the north of the house on the 45 Oak Street property here. So our site plan is kind of oriented 90 degrees from this view.
all right,
So north is planned left, as I show you on the screen.
so we had a similar situation with stormwater.
Yes, very.
That's why, and we got a quick brief on it, and we fielded a few complaints from abutters, and so if you can give us like a brief, but a little bit more in-depth as to what happened out there?
What originally happened was we had an unprotected slope in the back half. Can you bring that up, Jeff, the sheet 2, or the next sheet?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that back left area. There was supposed to be
Yeah.
a building, there was a basin in process of being constructed, but it hadn't been built yet, so it's just a bare slope. And, you know, about, I don't know, the left half of that plan area right there was exposed soil. And the water from the December 11th storm, then the December 18th storm, flew down into that far left corner and past the town line, down into a wetland under the Mazinski property, kept on going, hit a stream, and went 1,300 feet all the way down to Manchog Pond, which is a great pond. And if you've seen any of the pictures of video, it's like a flume of coffee-colored water flying into the lower part of the pond near the dam. So that's what happened.
Okay. So then the Conservation Commission, they met with an enforcement order?
Yes, there was, and
Okay.
there are currently $200 a day fines until such a time that the Conservation Commission is satisfied that this issue is resolved. So there's no end to it at the moment.
What is resolved?
Here's
It
what-
being stabilized, cleaned up, both?
It's stabilized from the moment, you know, they have been, that basin is in that far left corner, which we call Basin 5, is being constructed. They've beefed up the erosion sedimentation controls. They've created a swale. They put in riprap. They have put in a diversion ditch above about halfway up the hill, so that anything coming down the hill, at some point, it'll just go into the ditch and get diverted away instead of, you know, adding to the volume of water going down to the same place.
Is it a temporary ditch just to help
Yes,
with
it
the
is.
situation now? or
Yes, it is absolutely
Okay.
temporary, was never shown on any plan ever, so this is, and this is something they have the ability to do. It's
Okay.
construction site, construction period, you know, controls that are needed. There's a problem with that, though, because the endpoint directed itself directly to the Kroll property, which is right over the line, Charlotte and Steve Kroll at 78 Torrey Road. And every time we have a storm, they've been pumping water out of these infiltration basins because they're not draining. I think for similar reasons as we were having the problems with the cubes of Gilboa. So they're just pumping out so they can get the volume, you know, so it'll be able to store more water when it rains. And they were pumping it out into the diversion ditch. It was going through stones, it was bleeding under a silt fence and then straight onto the Kroll property. That has been corrected. Now they're pumping it to the top of the hill where they've created a new giant you know, sump hole for it to go into. So that's an improvement so far. But that said, there's still so many problems with water, the continued potential for water-related, erosion-related, seepage-related problems, because we're still in the middle of winter and we haven't even hit early spring yet. You know, we got to make it through April, and who knows what's going to happen.
Through the chair to yourself. The thing that I heard was, or we heard here, is that the trees and the removals in the rear was premature, that they went far beyond what they were based on not having things complete to create no vegetation. Is that true or not true?
There was a phasing plan.
Right.
And I understand that was part of what this board had required, right? So the question is, did they open up more land and more phases than they should have? I think hindsight 2020, that answer is yes, right? So
Well, that would have added to the problem.
if they kept on going with, like, say, Phase 4, that it would have been a complete disaster, right? Like, if it wasn't one now, it would have been.
Were they current on the phases, though? Like up to date following the phases?
Or
That's-
they call it clear cut.
Or are they going up further than what's allowed?
What I understand, they've finished cutting trees, but they haven't stumped or removed the logs of some of the sites.
Right, so the property was part forest, part field, right? So the field portion is obviously still open. They've cut down all the hedgerows in the areas around the field.
Wow.
Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, can you make a square around the fields that haven't been, yeah, there we go. There's one of them. There's a second one. So there were four separate fields, and they're all in that area.
Okay.
But the right-hand side and then the far side where Basin 2 is, all mostly exposed soils. Yeah. And the basins, they're just not draining. So it's a fear that, they're going to get too full, or they're weeping out of the bottom. It's still very touch and go. I will say that they are working diligently. The question is that the conditions are so tough. Is it enough? And time will tell. So far, since the December 18 storm, there hasn't been any, I'll say major problems. There has still been problems with silty water exiting the site, excess water leaving the site. Nothing on the scale that it was on December 11, December 18, but it is still a continuing problem, as the abutters have testified, and I've also seen myself.
So I guess maybe that question would go to the peer review engineer that's been going there, just to make sure that they're following the phases and construction plan as approved.
Yes, and one thing the Conservation Commission has required is a to-date as-built progress plan showing existing topography and how that lines up with what was approved.
Did you get that yet? Or is it?
I've seen drafts of it.
Okay.
They have not submitted any kind of final, because they did the topography with a drone via LiDAR, and it picks up every little detail. So they're trying to, I guess, what I call smooth it out.
Clean it up.
Yeah, clean it up so it's a little easier to read. They're doing it in 1-foot contours, which is how it was designed. They show proposed 1-foot contours, so they're showing the as-built 1-foot contours, and they're trying to clean that up right now.
So is Basin 5, that was the
Yep.
major issue?
That was the major issue.
Okay. Is that built to standards and working condition at this point?
To answer that would still be a little premature, because
Okay.
we're waiting for that as-built. It's looking like it's on track, but I don't want to give any definitive answer on the record at the moment.
Okay.
Through the chair, how often is Haley Ward out there? Are they involved in?
We can't hear you.
Sorry. How often is our peer engineer reviewer out there?
Oh, good. Yeah.
Hello, it's Douglas Bush, Haley Ward, doing the construction monitoring on the site.
All right, yeah, Doug, if you can give us an update from your perspective of the construction project as a whole.
Sure. So, briefly, I just want to mention that, can everybody see me?
Is there a way we can get his?
I can't hear.
Doug, you're a little muffled.
I don't know if that's him or us.
Yeah.
Can everybody hear me now?
Not really.
All I can say, maybe just try to speak a little louder.
All right, so from our point of view, our job on this particular project is to make sure that what's being put in place on site is in compliance with what's been proposed on the plan. At this point, the basins, so Basin 1, which is at the bottom of the hill. Basin 2 is when you get to the top of the hill, towards the center of the site. And Basin 5, what Brandon was just speaking about, have been installed. 5 has just been installed for the most part. What I can say is everything, I do my best to measure, make sure everything's as it should be, as shown on the plans. At this point, these basins don't have any outlet control structures. They have spillways, but there is no structure in it at this point, which, as the water comes into these basins, and water fills up, it's supposed to let the water out at a slower rate. So as far as how the basin's been constructed to date, everything looks as it should. So it's a little bit hard for us to tell if everything's working.
Excuse me.
It's a little bit hard for us to tell if everything's working as, designed on the plans and as well as in the stormwater report at this point. There is some issues. There's also some issues at the entrance to the site, that we can talk about as well. But but as far as we're concerned, with what they've built so far, obviously there's been some issues on the site controlling water. But as far as what they've built so far, everything looks as it should.
Okay. While we're on Basin 2 and 5, Mr. Bush, are you seeing anything that is developed or new information that they've learned or seen that's indicating that maybe the whole project in that area needs to be reassessed and re-engineered?
No, I'm more concerned about the entrance to the site. That's more, and it doesn't have anything to do with basins 1, 2, or 3. Like I said, I think we won't understand fully how those basins work until all the outlet control structures and piping is in as it's designed.
I just wanted to ask that while we had this picture up, while we were just talking about those basins. So we can go to the entrance.
Jeff, do you have an aerial photo of the entrance in Basin 1?
I have a site plan of that I could pull up. Like I could pull up the, this is the actual site
This is Greg Morehouse from Mill Creek Renewables. I can pull up a overhead from Basin 1.
Okay.
Okay. I'll give you a share.
Bear with me 1 second.
I met with Mr. Morehouse, Jeff Murphy, and others from Blue Wave Solar today on site for what I call a walkabout, question and answer. So I think it was very productive.
I forgot if I asked, is their restoration plan, has that been peer reviewed, approved?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Is it in someone's hands to do that? Or are we waiting for 53G?
Not yet. No, they just needed to submit it.
Okay.
Right, so we're still waiting for that.
Okay.
In fact, I believe there was a question that was posed to me today by email from someone on the team that I haven't gotten back to him yet because I've been preparing for this.
Okay. All right.
There we go. So that's Basin 1, which we were standing on today.
All right, so can you or someone just give a quick update, or show us what that is? Is it, that's the driveway coming into the?
Yeah, that's Oak Street.
So this is 45 Oak Street here. This is the driveway coming up. And over here, you go up this road about another 500-600 feet, and you will get to the top of the hill, where we could see Basin 2 in the previous photo.
Okay. Doug, is this a good picture for you to work with?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. All right. If you can address your concerns that you've shared and what's going on in your view.
Sure, so what you're seeing there is those two basins. You can see a truck towards the top of the site. There's a basin on the south side of it and the north side of it. Those are temporary at the moment. Originally from the infiltration basin 1, the proposed plan showed, and they built it as the proposed plan showed, the road draining directly down to Oak Street. And that it appeared that, where the driveway is cut, it appears to be making, at the time, it appeared to be making a more concentrated flow. more conveyance of runoff at that location. It's hard to say how much, from my point of view, how much runoff discharge at that same point prior to construction. There's an earthen berm along Oak Street at that point. It was partially wooded prior to construction. There was also a partially vegetated cart path that came through there that didn't, wasn't graded or oriented in the same way that the compacted gravel access road is now. So, this was noticed in June of '23. There was multiple instances where, I met on site with, Matt and other members of the town. We met on site with Blue Wave. And ultimately, there was a temporary plan put in place, which is what you see now. So you see those two basins. All along the road, there was water bars put in place. Any water that's running down that road is, being directed into infiltration basin 1, as well as into those temporary basins. And as well, if you come into the site, the roadway's been regraded it's a high point relatively close to Oak Street, and then it dips down so that any water that does get down the road will flow into that far temporary basin. We reviewed Beals and Thomas's stormwater report. It wasn't an in-depth review. They've already had a peer review of these plans and of this report. Everything elsewhere on the site looks fine. We didn't see any issues. The only issue we see here is in the stormwater report there's no design point. We have no pre-existing or post-development numbers to go by to see if there's actually an increase of flow. All we have to go on is that we've been on site and we've seen it. There's certainly an increased flow at that location. And at this point, that section does not, follow, or it's not in compliance with the original plan. So it's just temporary. And all we're recommending is that area be analyzed further, and some sort of permanent design be put in place for that particular spot.
And Doug, that's per your January 18 letter that you sent out, right?
Sure, yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've mentioned it in a couple of reports, but I think this ties it all together and clears everything up. Hopefully it does.
All right. Does the engineer for the project concur that we should reanalyze?
So I think there's a little bit of nuance to this. So when we did the design for the project, we broke up the flow that goes towards Oak Street into two kind of broad segments. So we looked at everything kind of south of the bend in the road, which is generally where kind of the existing ridge line or high point is, and then we looked at that entire length of the frontage of the site as a whole, not specifically at the driveway that Doug was suggesting. So what I will say is that, we did implement these temporary sediment basins, which were a way, and we regraded the road to try to capture as much of the overland flow from the driveway surface and get it into those two basins to minimize the water that was getting to the street previously when the driveway was first cut in. And in my assessment of the situation, I think what happened is when the contractor cut in the road and placed the gravel base, which is relatively pervious, soil material, it kind of created a conduit or a pathway for the water to get invited down to the road. And now we had that issue where we have a puddle that forms when it rains at the street. And in my view, the only way to remedy that solution is to put in a sub-drain to intercept the water, which is essentially groundwater or perched water that's traveling through that tracking pad and through that gravel layer underneath the road surface, and intercept that water and then pipe it into the swale that runs down Oak Street. But in prior discussions to explore that option, there were concerns from, I think, the highway superintendent and other town officials about doing that, and potentially, you know, concern about downstream issues. And I think that while we can certainly explore options to try and minimize the amount of water that's coming from this very last section of the driveway, it's just going to be very difficult to have a place to send the water. The water wants to go that way, and we can hold back as much as we can, but the water still is going to want to go that way. So I think we're kind of in a tough spot trying to thread the needle, you know, with a solution here.
Trying to figure out how to proceed without having just two engineers go back and forth about what they think the plan should be. So there clearly needs to be some adjusting for that part. Board, any questions for?
I have just a quick point.
Who's speaking? Okay.
Douglas Taylor Ward, sorry about that. I think the fear at this point is we bring that back to what the original condition or what the original proposed condition is, and you know, then we just have the issue again. You know, it seems to be working relatively well at this point. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but at this point, those controls that have been put in place appear to be functioning fairly well. You know, I just fear that, you know, you bring it back to what it was after all is said and done, and, you know, then everybody's gone, and that issue's still causing problems.
Through the chair.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. So is the road entrance as well as the other portions of the basins, are they covered in this restoration plan submission? Both areas?
So I can speak to that. Our restoration plan we submitted did not really focus on here. We did not have much of a silty discharge during those two storm events. The restoration plan was specifically focused on the Basin 5 area, the main area of the site, and then as well as cleaning up and testing for the areas where we deposit silt throughout the wetland and into Manchog Pond.
Brandon,
Yeah.
is there a enforcement order with anything with this part that we're talking about?
No, there is
Okay.
not. Yeah, the enforcement order focuses on the back half of the property.
Okay.
Where the sediment and the water made its way down into the wetland. So, that end, going up and to the left is where all the wetlands are, then where it goes to Manchog. But go ahead and bring it back to the front. In the front, the water issues are mainly with water making its way to Oak Street, especially where it freezes up and then just causes an absolute mess for walking and driving. So there's, water discharging from the entrance, which I understand really didn't happen before. And then from up and to the right, where there's an emergency spillway, and then there's a riprap swale that ends near the road. So the water is being funneled in that general direction close to the road, and it's around pole number 17 on Oak Street where the water really starts popping out of the ground. And when we had the Saturday meeting with the two conservation commissions and the applicant on site, we had a real, good freeze, and Oak Street was a disaster in that, around that bend. So the question is, well, what I've heard is that, yeah, there's always been water that has discharged, bled out onto Oak Street. That's something that's always happened, but it seems to be getting exacerbated at the moment. And how can we help to resolve that? And one thing about this site is that, is everyone familiar with the concept of hard pan? So it's not rock, but it might as well be. It's just soil. It's extremely, extremely dense. And it starts around 2 feet so below the ground surface. So the top 2 or so feet of the soil is nice, soft, friable soil. But then you hit this stuff and it's hard as a rock. And even if you did dig through it with like a backhoe, they tend to scrape and take little by little. It's very dense and the water doesn't like to infiltrate through it. And you get what's called a perched water table starting around this time of year. So the water comes down from the sky, goes through that nice friable soil, would act kind of like a reservoir for it. It saturates that soil. Then it hits the hard pan. I'd say about a third of it goes through the hard pan. 2/3 of it rides on top and goes downhill slowly through the soil that's already there. And this entire site is just got hard pan everywhere. And because of that, you have a seasonally high perched water table. What I've been told is that the water tables tended to be in the 18-inch range seasonally. So at the wettest time of the year, the water is about 1.5 feet below the surface. And then you start bringing in big yellow machines, and they start grading the land. And they scrape down some of that nice friable soil on the surface, so now you have less of a distance before you hit the hard pan, so there's not as much of a reservoir for the water that's coming down. It hits the hard pan, and then it flies, and it becomes a big problem.
If I could, through the chair, so you have more water running faster.
Correct, in my opinion, yes.
And so, if I through the chair, test pits were done.
Test pits were done, and I asked this question today.
Yeah, I mean,
So I asked Mr. Murphy if they had done those, individual test pits, and he said, yes, they did. And I'll let him to talk to it, the issue if he wants to, but one of the questions I had was, like, how did you base your infiltration rates? Because in the absence of an on-site, like, infiltration test with something called, like, a double ring infiltrometer, you use standardized rates. They're called Rawls rates, R-A-W-L-S, Rawls rates. So it's based on soil texture. So a sand would obviously be quick, and a silt or a clay would be very slow. The soils on site, based from what I've seen, are somewhere in the middle, called a sandy loam. And they have a infiltration rate, tell me if I'm wrong, Jeff, of 1.02 inches per hour, which with the hard pan, I think is way too fast. But I asked him about that today. He says, no, we based it on the much slower rate you would use for silts, which is 0.27 inches an hour. So like a 1/4 of an inch an hour, which is, but even with that, we're still not getting infiltration. Now, like, an argument can be made that, yes, the basins, they're silted up with that veneer, that clay liner, but still we have seasonal high water tables coming up, perching the soil. So you can't, once you hit the water table, it's not going down, right? You need to have dry soils for the water to continue going down into the ground. So that's a concern of mine. And the fact that we have very dense soils that just do not like to perk.
Hearing those concerns, Doug, any input with hearing those concerns with regard to the project?
No, I mean, I think it's pretty evident that the soils out there not well lit. I don't think that's, looking at his report, the stormwater report, it's, and that's the rate they used. I don't have any issues with that.
And these are the kinds of sites that solar has been targeting, because they're really not suitable for residential use. They might not have never gotten a perk for a septic system because the soil's so dense, right? So it's the perfect place to put up a solar farm, but the problem with solar farms, they use up so much land and expose so much soil at one time that you end up with these exact kinds of problems.
I have a question, if I could, Chair. So did the engineering, the design, did they take into account these soils, these soil conditions?
According to Mr. Murphy, and he can speak to it, his answer is yes.
Yes.
And is it understood that at this point that they opened up more area and created more runoff in different directions beyond what their engineering could, and beyond what their retention ponds could control at this time?
I would like to hear that answer directly from Mr. Murphy on the record. That's all right.
No. The answer to the question, so one thing that needs to be clarified is right now the site has exposed soils, it's under construction. There are areas, large areas of the site that were regraded and opened up where in the interim state, the runoff rates are going to be higher than they will be under the final conditions when the entire site is vegetated. And our modeling of the stormwater design is based on the final end condition of the site. You know, it's the runoff curve number is a function of the soil type as well as the ground cover type vegetation-wise. So right now in the interim construction period, there is a higher amount of runoff that comes from the site by virtue of it being disturbed. So we have not yet achieved the parameters or assumptions of the design because we're not yet at the final vegetated state. So again, we worked with the information we had. We looked at the soils maps. We did test pits. We assumed a very low infiltration rate when we designed the basins. Basins 2 through 5 were all designed with what are called wick drains, which are essentially, drains at the bottom of the basin that have outlet control valves that will allow us to draw down the water in the basins slowly in the event that they're not infiltrating as expected or to do maintenance. The one basin where we were not able to incorporate that into the design was Basin 1 because it was at the bottom of the hill and there was not much topographic relief to be able to daylight that type of a pipe, so we didn't include that as part of the design of Basin 1. So again, we designed the project based on the information we had at the time, and I think it is also worth clarifying, based on the context of the site and the challenging soils, which is an underlying condition, we have received an excessive amount of rainfall in the last 6 months, 45 inches approximately, which is nearly an entire year's worth or average year's worth of rain. So when you get that much rain in that amount of time, over and over, week in and week out, it just has an accumulative effect on the overall amount of water and saturation we're seeing, from this site, but quite frankly, everywhere right now, so.
Through the chair, may I ask another question? Is that, so what I think I'm hearing is that, and I maintain that you won't fully achieve your water retention until all the basins are complete and the silt is cleaned out and everything is built. But it's sort of like crossing your fingers during the time that you clear cut and the vegetation is gone until you can ultimately get everything in place and hope that you don't have these 100-year storms. There was no planning for that. I guess you can't plan for it. But can you sort of suggest that you engineers don't have a plan for this kind of calamity, in the meantime? Or you just kind of hope that we stay dry until everything gets built?
Sorry.
So in terms of the roles of engineering design versus the contractor and construction period. So during construction period, stormwater control and runoff is the responsibility of the contractor who has operational control of the site, and it's within their means and methods to decide how they want to sequence and regulate and build things. And there is an amount of logistics involved and the steps that they deem necessary to take. You know, we as engineers aren't dictating to them how to build the project. We design the final product, but it's up to the contractor under the construction general permit and the SWIP that they have to manage the site runoff during construction, and that's typical of any construction project. So yes, there can be things that we put on the plans for the site, you know, site preparation plan, you know, and but at a certain point, the contractor has operational control of the day-to-day activities, how they're temporarily diverting water and things like that while the project's being built, because that's in their realm of control.
And Mr. Chairman, my answer to that is there is truth to what he says. But in the end, my opinion is that these folks are supposed to be professionals that have presumably done this before and are responsible, period.
I have a question.
If I could add, Douglas Bush here. You know, one thing I noticed when they were given the go-ahead to do phase 2, which is the construction of infiltration basin 2 and 5. So that's 5 there. Yeah, so, yeah, okay. So that's 2 he's looking at, and 5. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah, down there.
You have a plan on
Yes.
He's looking southeasterly.
that? Oh, okay. So.
Yep, basin 2 here, basin 5 over in this area.
Over here. Okay, so that's basically phase 2. One thing that I did notice was that there was, you know, that those areas were cleared, and specifically basin 2 was primarily being worked on. So I want to say in October of 23, those areas were cleared while basin 2 was being primarily worked on. So from October to December, that corner was left alone. You know, there was some work done in there, but there was no basin construction, which left, you know, exposed soils. You know, that slope was vulnerable. And then subsequently we did have some issues. You know, I would, in my opinion, I would suggest that that corner that we're looking at with all the laydowns, the tree laydowns, you know, that's phase 4, I believe. There's 2 basins in there, one towards the middle and one towards the far corner. I would suggest a more streamlined, more tight phasing plan in that, knowing what we know now, a more tight, additional phasings, so that we don't completely wipe out that corner and run into the same issues, knowing that we're having drainage issues on that eastern side, which I believe is the Kroll property.
Okay.
So I can speak to the plan going forward here. What the challenge is we had a very limited amount of fill we could bring into the site, and to build these basins, we needed stripless land to even get the amount of, you know, soil we needed to build them. But we do have the amount of soil we need to build these 2 basins back here without stripping this land prior to doing any of that. So our plan is to go in, install these basins with very minimal impact to the grass and felled trees areas here. And then from there, we would start, you know, working on the grading and all that stuff once the basins will be fully constructed.
Yeah, I mean, that was another thing that I was going to bring up as far as keeping the upstream area from those basins as vegetated as possible, so that, you know, we don't have as many, you know, we don't have exposed soils throughout that.
Yep, and-
throughout that
yep.
time. So I understand what you're saying there.
Perfect.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, if I could. In the next 2 or 3 days, we're expecting quite a bit of rain, as you're aware, in addition to warming temperatures, melting ice, and snow. Under the site's current condition today, what can we expect?
You can expect very minimal runoff, and anything that does run off will be clean. We've added a temporary settling pond that Brandon, you saw today in this area, which we're using to pump any excess water from basins 2 and 5 into, to make sure we have the storage capacity in basins 2 and 5 to handle the expected rain and the snow melt coming up.
I did witness that, and it is a big improvement over what they had before. The effectiveness of it will be tested shortly.
Through the chair. I just have one last question. I'm not sure that I heard the answer. Did you clear more than you should have based upon your plan?
We cleared what was agreed upon with Ken Frazier in the building department over the summer. I believe, Douglas, you were involved in that, where we kind of said to even build these basins, we need to clear this essentially L shape here. So we did make the town aware of what our intentions were.
They
and
cleared
that's
it
what
in
we
March, not the summer.
I think one of the issues which I just brought up was that it was just left cleared for some time, a couple months, until there was a major issue, and then the basin started again, to get constructed. If we were going to do that, I think, building those basins in conjunction would have made more sense. I don't know how they would have worked it out, but I think that's part of where the problem, started in that corner.
So with the enforcement order, they can't move forward with the project.
Correct.
Anyways, until
Correct.
the enforcement order and complete restoration's done, right?
Until the commission is satisfied that the rest of the project that's already constructed is functioning and stable enough to their satisfaction, only then can they move forward.
And I think there's a lot of back and forth. I think once it gets to the time, and it seemed like it might be a little bit before we move forward with construction, that everyone should be on the same page as to how it's going to proceed.
Right, and Mr. Chairman, one thing that concerns me is we received the construction schedule, and on the construction schedule is a start date for Phase 4 for grading, site prep, and basins, starting on 26th of February. I think that may be a bit premature.
Again, that schedule is very open to adjustments.
Right, and they wouldn't be able to do that anyway.
We will not be pushing anything further until the town is satisfied.
Right, so I just wanted to point that out, put it on the record that they're currently in a cease and desist for all new work, but I would not recommend opening up any new exposed soil in the wintertime.
No, I strongly agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question for Greg. I haven't seen the schedule. I know it came through today, but I haven't looked at it. What's the plan for getting those control structures into those basins?
So that's not specifically detailed out in the schedule, but the plan is to start with Basin 2 next week, draining it, clearing out the bottom, making sure it's a surface that we can work with, and beginning to put the outlet control structures in starting next week.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll see a little bit more clearly, what these basins can truly handle once we start getting all the outlets in, and letting them function as they were designed, and hopefully they will.
I have something to add, Mr. Chairman. So the Cubes of Gilboa, the restoration plan created by Beals Associates was to do what we call in situ infiltration testing with a double ring infiltrometer to help get the actual infiltration rate, and not just a standardized rate based on soil textures. I'm wondering if that might be something that the board may be interested in. And you do these tests in saturated soil conditions, which we have. So it may be a pretty accurate test to see what the actual rate is.
Should that be added to their restoration plan?
I'd like to run that by Mr. Bush.
I'm sorry, I missed that last portion. Can you say that again?
So an idea that I had on another project, part of the restoration plan for the infiltration basin is to scarify all the sediment off the bottom, try to get it back to as close to what it was before. But after it's been drained, do an in situ infiltration testing, like a double ring infiltrometer test, or a number of them across different parts of the basin. Do you think that has any applicability or would add any value here, Mr. Bush?
Possibly. I mean, their design is certainly, their stormwater report certainly does not include a terrible amount of infiltration. It's more based on, as the water level raises up, it's going to outlet out a series of weirs in those outlet control structures. So there's not, currently those basins are based on very poor infiltration rate at the moment.
They based it on 0.27 inches per hour, right?
Which is minimal. Yeah.
Which is minimal. I wonder if it's even lower than that in reality.
It might be. I mean, if you walked on site, I walk away with 40 pounds of silt and sediment attached to my boots. It's sticky, mucky stuff that it's hard to believe rainy water could get through there. So I mean, their stormwater report seems to indicate that that's what they're basing their design on.
I would be in favor of compelling infiltration testing.
Sure. So would that be added condition, or how?
Well, that's a request the board can make.
Okay. And I'd still got to figure out what we're going to do with Basin 1, right? The driveway, what's the plan with that?
In terms of that, and timing, I think it's important to understand timing. This restoration plan was written on January 3rd. What is the plan for timing?
Well, a lot of that restoration plan handles off-site restoration, but they do talk about, part of that is what they're going to be doing on-site. So I was wondering if Mr. Murphy had an answer for that. Or anybody else on their team.
The on-site portion of that is currently ongoing. The off-site, we're waiting for some permissions, we're waiting for a few, some paperwork to be signed, stuff like that. But the on-site portion of that restoration plan is ongoing. We've already removed about 50% of the silt from our property itself. And again, a big part of that was building the basins, pumping, which we are diligently doing on a daily basis.
But the restoration plan is under control of the conservation.
Right, but
Yes, it is. Happy to work with the planning board.
Yeah.
it's being peer reviewed also? This restoration
I
plan?
peer reviewed that myself. In fact, I don't know if you have, you see my signature up the top
Yeah,
left?
I just wanted to be, I thought we said earlier that it hadn't been peer reviewed.
It had not been engineering peer reviewed.
Does it need to be?
Similar to Cubes of Gilboa, it's something we're looking at. We haven't decided, the Conservation Commission, that is, hasn't decided yet how deep the engineering review really needs to go, but we've already gotten that letter from Haley Ward and Mr.
I
Bush.
see your hand. We're just trying to get around the board. I've seen them. We're just trying to work with the board. It's not technically a public hearing, but we're trying to get through, and then I'll open it up for comments. Okay. All right. So we don't really know exactly when the restoration plan is expected to be done.
The weather is the big enemy right now because they have to do some soil testing on the Mozinski property to make sure that it's not contaminated soils. One thing that the Conservation Commission discussed at length was, at the last meeting on Monday, was testing for PFAS, right? and Blue Wave spoke about what the ramifications could be. The commission still required, they added a condition, the PFAS be tested.
What is that?
It's the new sexy chemical that is everywhere. It's called the Forever Chemicals. Have you heard of these? It's in plastics and...
But off of farmland? That was all farmland?
Could be, could still be.
You never know.
It's everywhere. And we're going to find out. So the thing is you can't get a soil sample if the soil is frozen. It makes it difficult. And then the second part of that is, provided that the tests come out good, they have to go down there with a vac truck and a very, very long hose and suck it up. And those vac trucks, they're designed to take individual particles of soil and then bring it through the hose. With the soil frozen or is partially frozen, it doesn't have enough juice to take up chunks. So the winter right now is our big enemy. And it's frustrating. I got to stop using. I'm going to use beguiling. It's beguiling that this sediment, as much as like 6, some places 9 inches deep on the Mazinski property, that's sitting there in the wetland in and around the brook that's on site. And every time it rains and the water flushes down, it's taking more and more fine sediments, continuing to go down the pond, continuing to contaminate Manchog Pond, and it's happened 4 times already, and I'm guaranteed it's going to happen a 5th. And every time that happens, the phones are flooded and the emails are flooded with very angry people, and rightfully so.
Matters.
Yeah.
Are the complaints going to you?
They're going to me, they're going to folks
Is there like one
in
point of
Sutton.
contact that everyone's dealing with?
No, no. I get text messages from conservation members in Sutton saying somebody that they know sent this to me, and then they send it to me, so I can then put it into the file, and I'm the centralized, everybody ends up sending everything to me eventually, and
Yeah.
I'm the one who's putting it in one place, but it hasn't been everybody coming to me directly.
Okay.
And it's kind of like herding cats, but that's as good as you're going to get.
So I think definitely my recommendation for one part would be, if this restoration plan, say it gets completed this week, I would probably recommend that no new cuts be made for expanding the project or moving on to a phase until April 15th. That's a standard date that most construction companies use for shutting down, in the winter months and restarting April 15th. I don't know if the board concurs or feels the same way. Again, I don't know when the restoration plan would be done. So it could just be an extra layer, I don't know.
I wouldn't put a timetable on it right now. I don't see why.
Well, given the frozen nature of the ground right now, is the spring thaw going to help any in terms of what you're trying to accomplish?
The way winters have been lately, it could be thawed out in a couple of weeks, or it might not be thawed out until April.
And it could get thawed out again.
Exactly. It could thaw out and freeze 3 more times.
April 1st, we're planting trees, so
Yeah.
it better be thawed. So March 15th might be the date.
And then I
in my
think-
mind.
I think we just need some clarification. I don't know if Doug can create something based on what he's heard from everybody on what he thinks should go on. There's been a lot of back and forth, and I just want to come up with a solid game plan of how we're going to move forward with potentially redesigning the driveway area and get all recommendations from him in.
There's a lot of balls in the air,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's no doubt. This is a very fluid situation.
Yeah.
No pun intended, I take it.
Board, any questions or comments more? Okay. I'll open up to anyone in the audience or butters for new information or new complaints since, I don't know when the last issue was, or comments on what was discussed tonight. I'll I'll just go left to right. Shirley?
Shirley Mazinski, 60 Oak Street. I'm a little confused at what I'm hearing here. Because I hear, what, farmland with PFAS? It's not so much the farmland I'm concerned about. When you get those inches of silt going into the land, where did all the stuff come from? Yeah, we've got some certification, supposedly it came from a quarry or what have you in Charlton.
Imported soil.
Imported soil. 514 loads, in or out, combination. 13,032 ton of silt, sand, and stone. What can I say?
So the PFAS is being looked into, so is the soil testing.
Well,
as part of the...
It was a condition that was added to the conservation permit at 2 meetings ago, and then discussed again last night, this Monday, and really solidified that the commission is not backing down.
So the materials are getting...
Well, my concern is, all this, obviously you people haven't taken a site walk. I can understand that, but it is there, and we expressed concern at your last meeting. What happens is, this all flows into Lake Manchog. God forbid, I'd hate to have it looked at me and say, well, it's coming from your property, because it's not. It's coming from whatever was brought in. What can I say?
And along with any testing, there has to be a control. So they have to get a sample from an area on site that doesn't have the sediment, right? So the natural soil, and then they get a sample of what was eroded from the 45 Oak Street site, so there can be at least a comparison. Because one point in space could be anywhere.
But what I'm gathering, the Conservation Commission has more control of the testing material. Because the plan, so correct me if I'm wrong, the planning board doesn't have control of where they take material from. It's, you can bring material in as part of a construction project. It seems like a lot of weight, or the Conservation Commission, through this enforcement order and changing the plan, has a lot of play with the testing itself.
They do under the Wetlands Protection Act, the Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and also the Stormwater Bylaw, Article 11 of the general bylaws of the town of Sutton, which the Conservation Commission is in charge of. But under the Wetlands Protection Act, some of what they do is they protect the public interests, as stated in the law. And some of the public interests are protection of groundwater supply, protection of public and private drinking water supply, prevention of pollution, storm damage protection. Those are the four that I think best apply to this situation. So the Conservation Commission is completely in their rights to have controlling authority over the site, even if it's more than 100 feet away and therefore out of their physical jurisdiction, because everything from far above is going into the wetlands. So when that happens, the commission has the right to take jurisdiction over the source of the problem. And part of that solution is testing of the soil so that the groundwater, that the drinking water supply, that pollution is prevented. All those public interests are protected.
So I don't know if, Shirley, if there was more of a comment, question, but I know you're not going to be probably satisfied with the answer, but
No, I'm just clarifying
Yeah.
a statement that I heard from one of your members, farmlands.
yeah, so we...
May I address that?
No,
you're
Aaron, no,
I misspoke.
Aaron, no.
Oh,
I'm not going to let you
I misspoke.
just go back and forth.
It's all right. No, but
I'm trying to have control.
about the
There's a
material
lot
that
going
came
on.
in.
So
You're right.
I corrected you that the PFAS,
that's
it's
fine.
being looked at. It's being looked at.
Absolutely.
Again, I'll just keep going left to right. There's no, I don't know who had their hand up first, but just easier for me to keep track.
It's okay, we're friends. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
So Lisa Mozinski, 60 Oak Street. So your last meeting was, I believe, January 10th. And you all said you're going to get together and take sidewalk. On January 13th, the following Saturday, Friday night into Saturday, we had another major failure at Basin 5. More silt and water pouring into the woodlands on its way to Manchac Pond. That was the 4th incident. You're a body that wrote order of conditions to permit this thing, and who's been out there? So please, you have the right, through the order of conditions, even if you don't go together, to go out there, introduce yourself to the foreman, and see what's going on the ground. You can look at all this stuff, and it doesn't give you the magnitude, it doesn't give you any idea of what's going on out there. You heard how much fill has been brought in? One of my questions is, where's all the topsoil? I have no idea. When I was out there last Saturday, one of the Board of Selectmen, he looked at that slope at Basin 5 and he said it was unstable. He said we should get out of there. So has that changed? Because if that goes, that's major impact on, more so than it already is on Manchac Pond. Excuse me.
Well, what date did you say that, the 4th?
13th.
The 13th? Were we aware of that?
I thought it was the 9th and 10th, but as far as what the date of the storm was it the it was Friday, Saturday? Okay, so I just get the date right. I know it was a Friday,
Sorry,
Saturday.
it was 10 days ago.
Right, so, yes, that absolutely did happen. Yep.
And you have pictures, I sent you pictures of Basin 5. It was,
Yeah.
it's all silted up. Whatever was removed the first time on site with the vac has been totally covered over again. So our concern is that if this basin, if these slopes aren't stable, and what's going to happen in the next couple days and going into spring, we don't want this vac and remediation happening over and over again, because it's a very fragile wetland. It fans out, it's all moss, and weaves through the trees and the mountain laurel on its way to filtering water into Manchac Pond. So something has to be done to make sure this place is stable and that this isn't happening over and over again. And these ponds, to my understanding, are supposed to empty in 72 hours. Instead, they're being pumped out and refilling constantly. Where is this going to end? But please, go out and look at it.
Doug, I just want to specifically address, is Basin 5 stable? Or,
I just went out and took a look at it yesterday. They were working on a section, completing the section of embankment south of the spillway. I couldn't tell at the time, a little bit of snow cover, but, that section that they were working on has not been stabilized, but they were just, continuing to build it. So I would say that, I think going forward with these basins that, getting them some sort of erosion control blanket on those slopes as soon as possible, or some sort of slope stabilization. We've seen it on Basin 2. Basin 2 has got a blanket on it, and there's really been no issues as far as that slope. So, if going forward they can get those slopes stabilized, as soon as possible. My site inspection yesterday did not indicate any failures or potential failures, but, it was a little bit hard to see, but, everything looked stable at the time.
I don't know, Greg or Jeff, let's get that stable ASAP. What's your plan to get that stable sooner the better?
Yep, I'll talk to the guys on site and get that down ASAP. I know we have over 50% of that basin covered with erosion control blankets already, but I will ensure that the rest of it is done in a very timely manner.
Can it be done by tomorrow?
Yes, yeah, we have all the materials on site. We shouldn't need to. They were just still working on that, but we can discuss progress and verify exactly what the time frame is.
Who's going to be out there next? I don't know when you're...
I was out there today. My job now is, as the Board of Selectmen told me, that I had better be out there at least once a week for a walkabout with whoever's, in charge of the site to go over progress. So I plan on going next out sometime next week.
Or can you get it stable? I asked if you can get it tomorrow. You said you could. Can you get that done and send an email or documentation to probably the email chain?
With photos.
Yeah, I'll get some photos.
Or write to Matt. I don't know what the best.
That's fine.
Okay.
The chain is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I can chime in, I'm Elvira, I'm the project manager with Blue Wave. As far as I've been informed by Bates, and I think we saw part of that on site today as well, even though it was mostly covered with snow, but there are erosion control mats down on the entire slope off of Basin 5 as of, I want to say, the end of last week. And then today they were additionally sort of reinforcing the BMPs around any loose soil on site. I know there was a big pile of sort of dirt that they were working in down in the, was that northeast corner, I think, which has also been, it hasn't been covered because they weren't able to since they're still working in it, but they have surrounded it with silt fence and hay bales, I believe.
Okay, so...
Yep, and I don't have a more recent picture, but I do have a picture from 1/6 where we were at on January 6th. And, we should be, and we are been much further along since that was taken.
All right, so maybe just get a confirmation that it's stable. If it's not stable, stabilize it. If it's stable, just confirm it.
Yeah, so this was the day we finally finished compacting and grading the back of the basin. So this was 1 day's worth of work here. So I'm under the impression it's mostly done, but I will ensure that everything that is not done is completed.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a point of clarification, though. And this goes back to the Bazinskis. Is it so much that the slope did not look stable and that the dirt would start coming down because of the water? Or is it the whole structure itself looked like it might rupture like from the bottom and blow out?
Lisa Mosinski, 60 Oak Street. So, in fact, it wasn't probably the slope, it was the bottom where the water was still coming out and it had overrun the silt fences and charged towards the northeast corner again. So it was at the bottom.
Right, so it's not so much the erosion control blankets and keeping the soil in place, it's their observation that water was still seeping out of the bottom. And the question is, well, if it's doing that and it's bringing so much silt and water through it, like how stable is that, the whole wall to begin with? That was the concern.
So we'll have to get an assessment of that from the
engineer eventually. Yeah, so this is something I'm going to bring up with the Conservation Commission. When I was there today, there was snow on that entire slope. I didn't see any weeping or bleed out from the bottom of the slope, so that was my observation today anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
Me?
Yep. Yeah.
Lori Howe, 41 Oak Street. So I won't reiterate everything that they said, but I agree with them. I would like to know how many trees were removed. This has been asked previously and not answered. I know that the ones near Basin 2 were removed in March, and the site was not touched on that side for months afterwards. Since then, our property has significantly more water. regardless of whether there's been a rainstorm.
So,
I
can
understand.
you just, specifically, what is your question? So how many trees?
How many trees have been removed? And Shirley mentioned that the topsoil has been removed.
Like
which is-
cut or stumped? I just want to, I want to
Cut.
specifically ask them and get an
In other
answer.
words, they're not doing what trees do. They're not absorbing the water. That's what I'm talking about. How many trees have been removed that were previously managing the water that was up there?
Okay.
And on the flip side of that is, how many solar panels does this design have? When I first came to these meetings 4 years ago to tell you all how much water was up there on the hill and tell you how much I hated this idea, I remember that the project was smaller. So I'm wondering how many solar panels are supposed to go in, and alongside that, how many foundations will go in under those to hold the solar panels, and how big and deep are those foundations? You know, I'm thinking about the further disruption of that land to put in these foundations, and how that can affect potentially stormwater. I also would like to know what they will be growing. It's been discussed that they would have sheep, or they would have hay up there. And quite frankly, I don't think that hay could grow in a puddle. So, so my concern, you know, is clearly that this water is not going to be managed after the site is completed. Is it the Conservation Commission's job to determine whether a deeper engineering review needs to happen? Or is that something that the planning board can do? Because I really don't think that the plan as it is being worked on is going to work. And I don't want to see this go all the way to the end, and then everybody throw up their hands and walk away from it and be like, well, we tried. And then my backyard is a wetland, the wetlands are all destroyed, the pond is destroyed, and all kinds of other problems with the street and everywhere else.
So,
You know, I know that hindsight is 20/20, but, you know, I'd really like to see and know that we're doing the best that we can, and that we're really looking at the numbers. How much water can these basins hold and handle? How much water were those trees handling? And how much more disruption is there going to be up there? Is there a way to make this project a little bit smaller and get some trees back up there? Because this is crazy, the amount of water that's coming off of that hill. And just to clarify something, earlier Brandon said that there is a cease and desist. There is not a cease and desist. There is an enforcement order, which the Conservation Commission advised me at the last meeting this week, or whenever that was. I've been going to every single meeting, so I'm getting confused. But it is an enforcement order, and my understanding was that enforcement order said that they can only work on Basin 5. But they're now going to be working on Basin 2, which is right next to our property. So those are my comments and questions. Anything that can be answered, or at least if you could take it into consideration, I would greatly appreciate it.
well, I think the site plan hasn't changed, so that's a readily available copy of the site plan that will have the number of solar panels and foundations on it.
Okay.
So that's a plan that, they haven't changed it, like, that's the plan that was submitted.
Well, when I first
So-
went to meetings, they were talking about it, and I was writing these things down, but it grew from the original plan, from the original proposal,
All right, so
from 4 years ago, so.
I'll see if they have a quick answer for the number, but that is a plan, the plan is readily available that can be seen. I know that's a lot to count. So, does someone have the answer to how many trees have been removed specifically? And if you do have a number of the solar panels and/or foundations, and is the
size and depth of how the foundations are going to be placed would be of interest.
Yeah, so that should all be on the plan. So also on the plan would be the intended use going forward. Okay, yeah, so that's all on the plan. So how many solar panels and how many foundations? Does someone know that answer quickly?
I don't have the exact count of foundations off the top of my head. The solar panel count is 6,024.
Okay. Do you know how many trees you've removed from the property?
I don't have that exact count off the top of my head.
Can you get possibly
Yeah, I'll
a
work
count?
with
Okay.
our clearing sub to get some totals.
All right. Was there any other questions that we didn't answer?
He was going to.
Yeah, so they're not allowed to work in the area of Basin 1. They are working in the area of Basin 2. I personally think that it's positive. One of the things they did recently is they created a diversion swale in the, I wonder if you could bring up the photo of that area, the one that we walked today that goes from the south part of the property, diverts water to infiltration basin 2 instead of the low point on the south side of basin 2 that heads directly to the Rossi property. So that was a positive improvement. And they are allowed to work around basin 5. That's the area the commission really wants them to focus on, right? But they are absolutely prohibited from starting any new phases. As far as requiring a re-engineering of the site, the commission is reserving judgment on that until they see the progress as-built plans and have further discussions during the conservation meetings. But it's something that I think that if the commission does have an inkling of going forward with, that they absolutely would want to coordinate with this board about, and hopefully have everybody simpatico,
Yeah.
if and when that happens.
Yeah, and I would like to work together to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah.
If it needs, yeah.
It's good.
You had a lot of questions. Do we answer
yes, I
and
do.
attend to each one? Okay.
Go ahead.
Phyllis Charpentier, Manchard Pond Foundation. I'm currently serving as the president. I live at 20 Irma Jones Road in Sutton, but I do have a daughter who has a house on Ledgestone in Douglas, so I'm very attached to the entire area. Our organization also belongs to a number of Blackstone River watershed organizations, so I wanted to point out that today the conversation has focused on the two events, the rain events that happened in December. Lisa brought up another one in January. There were actually two. With the December 20th, the 18th, 20th, 22nd, these rain events, we see brown in Manchog Pond, but then for quite a few days later, we're still seeing brown, and the flow out the dam is impacting Stevens. So say the event on the mid-December, within 2 days, Stevens was entirely brown. And we have, someone took video of the Mumford River, where headwaters of the Mumford, a tributary of the Blackstone River, it was coming out the Stevens Dam, so the river was totally flowing brown. So the impact list on the restoration plan, it doesn't take into account the two January events, and it doesn't list, the impact area fully. The Douglas Highway cleaned catch basins on Oak Street, 4 catch basins. I believe it was on the 20th of December, took out 5 tons of sediment. Catch basins are cleaned annually, so you know that was from this event. We had reports of impact on Parker Court in Douglas, which is along the shoreline. It goes into Huff Road from like the King's Campground. But Parker Court, one woman had like 4 feet of water just flowing under her summer cottage. So the impact is much further than just say Manchog Pond or the areas they're indicating. I've also spoken with the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. We have a beautiful, healthy cold water fishery stream that flows into Manchog Pond through a number of people's property here into like the Lake Manchog camping. That stream flows right into that cove of Manchog Pond. The concern of the cold water fisheries program is that if we have another catastrophe and one of these catch basins overflows, is that stream going to be impacted? And what we saw in January, the earlier two events, is that the flow, not the driveway, but through the woods, through the Rossi's property, it's going into a roadside ditch or trench, and it's flowing under, through a culvert under the road where that frost heave is every year. And the gas line, beautiful turf area, that just opens up and goes right down to that stream. So I haven't observed sediment there, but where we have new flows coming through the woods, not the driveway, but through the woods, I'm very concerned about that stream, and then another whole area of Manchog Pond will be impacted. So I think we need to, look further than the driveway, further than these catch basins. And as you pointed out, I think the next rainstorm will definitely let us know how successful things have been.
Yeah, and I don't want you to think that we weren't ignoring the previous events. So we did a quick overview of kind of like what happened before, and I wanted to just start from where the enforcement order kind of came into effect.
Yes. And two other points. There's talk about all this rainfall. Well, we've had a very, very wet year to begin with, and one of the town's inspection reports over 12 inches of rain in July. Another thing that's been impacted is our water level. We're extremely high. The town of Sutton regulates our dam and does a drawdown in the winter for flood purposes, but we also get some invasive species control. We have 3 invasives.
I was going to ask what the water level is, just out of curiosity for that lake. There's been a lot of rain this whole year.
A lot of rain, but they're also pumping.
Yeah.
So what we've seen is that the two watersheds, Stevens Watershed and Manchog, the boundary line is right at the top of the hill at their site. And when they started pumping, then we had the January events. I think they're pumping. We're hearing from Mrs. Kroll that she's got a wetlands on the Stevens side that it's dry. That was noted in your August inspection report with the town. So that flow with the change of elevations and the fill and all that is bringing more water into Manchog. But in July, we had over 12 inches of rain, and there was no problem on Manchog. We had our drawdown brought down in December before the rain events. We were down 4.5 feet. And with those events, just in December, we were up almost 4 feet. So we were like 15 inches exactly from full after being down 4.5 feet. So it definitely impacted our water level, and Sutton Highway has been trying to get us down, keeping it full, and hasn't been able to do that. So it definitely, the work up there has affected our water level, and now our concerns are water quality. And on a given weekend, there's thousands of people, tourists, coming to those campgrounds. King's Campground, which is partially in Douglas, Lake Manchog Camping, which is fully in Douglas, and then we have the YMCA camp, which buses in children, like 180 kids every day in the summer. And then at the very north, we have Sutton Falls Campground. So the whole area just becomes a, wonderful destination. And the boat ramp, the state boat ramp has close to 50 sites, parking spots.
So I think I know, I kind of gathered one question. I know it was more of statements, but the restoration project isn't the final only restoration thing. If there's ongoing issues that are created and there's still damage going on, this either a new restoration plan will be committed, a new enforcement. So it's it's a evolving. It will be evolving if there's issues.
Right, and one of the quirks of the Douglas Wetlands Protection Bylaw is that if more than 2 enforcement orders are issued, the project, the order of conditions becomes null and void. So just keep that in mind. Yep.
Everybody else set? Mike Zwicker, 46 Oak Street. To the new commissioner of COMCOM, welcome to the fire.
Yeah, into the frying pan.
We deal with the water on Oak Street, shouldn't be taken as a light joke. I heard comments where there's always been water, etc. You haven't been around since the beginning. I don't know if you've seen pictures.
Right, no, this is just what I've heard. Right.
So there's been water almost 8 inches thick against my foundation coming off this project. My neighbor's whole yard has washed into my backyard because of water coming off this project where the driveway is. I know right now we're ignoring the driveway. I think they've done improvements. It's nowhere near capable of handling this project. There's current pictures of silt, as brown water can be, running in that culvert on Oak Street. That culvert runs into a town-made retention pond behind my neighbor, which, as stated, feeds all Lake Manchog. So guess what? Everything coming across this road, sooner or later, is getting to Lake Manchog. Not only that, comment was made about wells. My well's in my front yard, where all this water's going. My neighbor's well's in his front yard, where all this water's going. So, we might be good right now. What's it gonna be like in 5 years? Or when this project's done, it's all over, and the town turns a blind eye and says, well, there's always been water there. No, it hasn't. Everybody that makes that comment doesn't live across the street. Come live in our house through all these rainstorms, and we'll show you what water is. Matt has a good photo library. Primarily, Matt's been there in the middle of some of these storms. It's ridiculous. Pond 1 doesn't drain at all. The 2 temporary retention ponds, at least they're doing a little bit, still do not hold the water back going down into Oak Street. So at some point in time, come live in our world and then see what it's all about. Thank you very much.
Hearing, it's hearing the concern, the driveway is an issue, so I don't know how we approach getting, or what will we do to get them to reassess it?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Murphy and I had a conversation about what a solution may be. Whether it's viable or not, I don't know. Mr. Zwicker might have an answer to this, seeing as he lives on the street, might know about these issues. A potential solution that he was talking about was tying in the water that would run off the property in the front to a drainage swale that is already on the east side of Oak Street. This swale eventually goes into a pipe that goes underneath the Maloney property.
Yes.
Into the back and then downhill into another wetland. But I've also been told that in recent years, there was some kind of a lawsuit about that. So how viable, it sounds like it would definitely help to intercept the water coming off the site and it would alleviate water problems on the road. But I don't know how viable that plan is given the legal history going on here.
That's why the highway department is hesitant to dig that swale.
Yeah. So I think we need to reassess what's going on, look at it, the whole aspect of everything with that driveway and figure out what's going on with it and what to do with it. So what do we need to do as a board? Do we get a report from Mr. Bush first and vote on that report?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that Basin 1 still needs an outlet control structure to regulate. And I don't believe we are scheduled as to when that's supposed to be installed. I believe that was supposed to help substantially. Not sure when that's supposed to be installed.
Yeah.
Through the chair, can we ask, and perhaps this is a Conservation Commission purview, but is there a provision to test wells on an ongoing basis? as a result of these problems?
That is an issue I've never had to deal with before. Like, how can the Conservation Commission compel the testing of wells, like private wells, as a result of potential contamination? It's a good question. I think that's might be a question.
Research.
Yeah, research, town council. That might be I don't know, might be too much, like a bridge too far. I don't know. But it's something I've never had to deal with before.
I guess if this water had never occurred in their yards and going across the road, and that it wouldn't be an issue.
I'm not going to say you're wrong.
I don't think it's within our purview, but potentially conservation.
Shirley?
Mr. Chairman, Shirley Masinski, 60 Oak Street. I just want to remind you, the water that goes across the street by Mike's or into Mike's yard and into his neighbors and into the pipe, that eventually gets down, and that's the back end of Lake Manchog. That's what feeds Lake Manchog.
And that's the cold water fishery.
Hold on. Sorry, just point of. I heard your comment, yes. Yeah, I know you haven't spoken yet.
I'm Bill Rossi, 41 Oak Street. I just want to point out that that pipe currently fills to capacity. I mean, there's no airspace in that pipe on these storms. Because I live right on the side where the entrance, the opening of that pipe, it fills all the way up. You can't put more water through it. There's no space.
I did see was your hand up? Do you have something?
No, just remember that, on that idea, now you're putting water on another person's property too. So the idea, if I can to the chair.
Yes.
Some way, somehow, an engineer that has a legitimate stamp or knows what they're looking at on a roadway. Roads are built every day. Look at the road and figure out how to divert the water. Whether it means you need to go down 20 feet with stone, wrap it, pipe it, and get it to go someplace else or whatever. That's what has to be done. Years ago, that was all field. The field absorbed all the water. We never in our lives, ever, period, ever had water like this go across Oak Street. Myself, I've done some work. My poor neighbor John has done thousands trying to fix his driveway every month. And literally, his driveway now, half of it is in my backyard because of the water coming out of that site.
So I guess we'll request Mr. Bush to, this is new to me, it's probably new to everybody, so I'm just trying to figure out what, we need to get the water going across Oaks, we need to get a lot of stuff figured out. I can't really say what I want to say with it, but we got to get a lot of figured out, so, but I think Oak Street, the driveway needs to get figured out. We got to stop that. So what's our course? What's the request that we make?
The board can call for a redesign of the basin in that area if they wish. It's something we can do according to condition 48 of our decision. Is ask for amendments to the stormwater system from the developer.
For basin one, driveway, I'm just trying to think of the wording for.
So some of the amendments have already made, the temporary basins in sequence that they've created, he's looking for that to be added permanently to the plan. The outlet control structure to be installed also. But just recently, I think this was the January 10th rain event, Mr. Dieter, 50 Oak, I believe, was getting washed out again. And this was after these temporary basins were already installed. So I suppose we could ask them for a redesign, and that's the most we can do.
You want to craft up a motion on that, just with the wording? See if anyone wants to make a.
Chair.
So
We have a peer review personnel working with us, right? I mean, This is Haley Ward, right?
Yes.
Is that who we hired? I think some engineer that we trust, I mean, we should be trusting all these engineers, and that's how we kind of got in trouble, I guess, is that, sometimes numbers work out the way people want them to work out, but whatever. We should be having them suggest to us that they need a redesign, because apparently...
I think it has been.
So we think clearly that they're asking for a redesign, the engineers?
Yes.
Our
Yes.
engineer.
So-
Okay, then that's what we do. That's it.
So the wording for, I don't know if we have to reference any,
Yeah, he suggested a permanent redesign be done at this time, and that was on December 12th, after that event. And again, in the January 18th letter, says the same thing. So this board could make a motion for the applicant's engineer to do a redesign of Basin 1.
With peer review.
just specifically Basin 1 or the drive, that's what I'm just, but
Yeah,
is
the-
Basin 1 gonna?
Basin 1 and the temporary structures involved with controlling stormwater runoff from the roadway to Oak Street.
That's a great motion right there. I don't know if I
May I make an addendum to that?
I'll entertain it.
Thank you. That as part of the process, that on-site, in-situ infiltration testing of those basins occurred to try and get an actual rate instead of just relying on a design rate as part of that process.
I like it. Good. Anyone care to so move that one?
So move the motion on the redesign as what our engineer has recommended, as well as what Dan has suggested.
In situ.
Yes.
Yeah.
Testing.
Yes.
Second.
Good. Motion made by Mr. Sokrat, second by Mr. Preston. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mike? Mike? Did you say?
I'm sorry, I spaced out.
It's past your bedtime here, so it's like it.
Mike Greco, aye?
All right. Opposed? All right. That passes. So if you can document that and do what we have to do for that.
Hello.
Mike wants to speak.
I don't see anybody up there on TV.
Oh,
jeez.
Hey, Charlotte, do you have any new information or any comments on what was discussed here tonight?
I have a couple of questions and a couple of comments. One has to do with Basin 5, which is 2 feet above my land, so where is it discharging? At the surface on the 2 feet up or the 2 feet down? The other thing is that when it's not being pumped out down my other portion, the water is coming out in the middle of my northwest grove and washing that away. So I'm just wondering, is it leaky?
It's covered under conservation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's covered under conservation, yeah.
So those questions are being asked or researched
Those
or?
questions are being asked, and at the moment, the commission is reserving judgment until we get the as-built plans with further discussion in the next meeting with the engineer.
Okay, then I've got the second question here is, let me get rid of my picture and you can see the background here. Oh, wait a minute, I don't think I'm doing this right. Okay, see this picture here? And you can see the bales right off the top where the black curtain is. This side is my land where all that silty water is coming through, and the other side is dry as a bone. So my question is, if you're busy putting in settling ponds up top and the land is dry, yet you're saying that the water is coming down, it's coming down underground. So now you're telling me you're gonna build 2 more selling basins, and where's that gonna come up? I just do not see them being built.
These are,
Yeah, I'll let you answer.
these are things that Mr. and Mrs. Kroll have already said to me many times. They are not enamored with this project, and they feel that continuing the project is only going to make problems worse on their side of the property line. This is all part of the process, so I think we need to deal with what we're dealing with right now, and then start focusing on those basins 3 and 4, which have yet to be built.
Yeah, so they're not even at that phase yet.
We're not even, yeah, if we start going ahead, we're just going to, it's like,
Yeah.
we'll be phasing out, as in getting ahead of ourselves.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right, well, I'll quit bugging you. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. I don't know how long you were up there. I'm sorry, I didn't look up there to see if you were raising your hand.
Yeah.
But glad we got your comments in. Thank you, Mike. I didn't.
Yeah. And I don't want to diminish Mrs. Kroll's concerns, because she has some very legitimate concerns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're being addressed.
We are doing our best.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on from that.
Need me for anything for you there? Okay. All right.
Chair, I'm back.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I think what I'll do is this. Oh, boy. I only have 3 left, but
You've been handing these out like candy.
tell me about it. In fact, I've been told to stop handing them out like candy, because I've been getting people that I don't even know who they are calling me on my cell phone with not so nice comments.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Nice meeting you. We'll,
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Somehow I think this is not our last, our last interaction.
all right, Matt, it's getting late. Any other ongoing development?
We don't have anything else on our...
Okay. We haven't had any minutes in a while. Are we just waiting for them to come in?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we just have some stuff to sign, and, yeah, anyone want to adjourn us?
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, sorry. I was asleep. I took a nap. Sorry. I just want to know if I could, just momentarily, Mr. Chairman.
Miscellaneous?
No, just a master plan. I just want to circle back. I know we had so much to do. I just didn't want to get into it earlier. But if I could, I just want to chat about that momentarily.
Yeah, we'll open that back up.
Okay, thank you. So, Matthew. I just wanted to chat about that a little bit, and my hope was that the blessing of the board, that we could put a stake in the ground in terms of when we would have the first meeting. As you know, at the last meeting, I was concerned, I didn't want to wait till after.
Right.
Me personally, I didn't want to wait until after the annual town election and the town meeting. I think we really could get started sooner without any funding, get the ball rolling, get those interested in a room together, talk about our role and responsibility and objective. And I was hoping that we could, like I said, decide on when we could have that first meeting.
Yeah, it'd probably be an offsetting Wednesday from the planning board, so.
Right. Sometime in March, would that be doable? Would that give us enough lead time, do you think?
I think so, yeah, that'd be good.
I had asked, the school committee still hasn't nominated yet.
Yeah,
I don't sign this, right?
I didn't do it. I said I'd get on their agenda.
is.
The board seemed to be okay with that. I want to go
Yeah.
talk to them face to face. So I'm hoping I could, see if we can get somebody, yeah. So, let's see here. So I'll try to deal with the school committee.
I abstained. No, it was
resident-
less. Sorry.
Sorry. Resident participation. Did we decide on how many of those from the community beyond those members of boards, committees, commissions we want to have on the study committee? If you will?
You typically take one from each voting precinct, I guess.
So it'd be 3.
Yeah.
Okay. And we agreed with that then, by
We don't-
consensus?
It's not something we have to do, it's just something I've done historically with other towns.
I find it works very well.
Yeah.
Last go-around, we had a lot of great participation from people who weren't on any boards or committees.
Yeah, so it'd be great to start with kind of a workshop.
Yeah.
Open.
Try to request one, I mean, if somebody, if there wants to be 2 or 3, that would be fine too.
So we can put out a, kind of a master plan job description, I guess, at the library. or up on-
That, and on the website, they have all the openings, so we can just say, we can put a name on it.
Okay.
Also, in terms of nomenclature, I think it's really important for the name of these boards to spell out what it is you're doing. I'd like to suggest, I don't know if we had anything definitive, we talked about it loosely, but that it's called the Master Plan Update Study Committee. No one had an objection to that. It's kind of what it was named before, it was just a study committee.
This would be an update.
This would be, it would be an update study committee.
Right, because a lot of it's probably going to stay the same and just update things that are current to this time.
That's right.
Compared to years ago.
Yeah,
Things
just-
that years ago nobody even thought of existed that exist now.
Yeah.
And none of that, the new laws and regulations and things that have changed that back in the day, you thought this way, and now you can't think that way, you need to think this way, so it's just an update.
It's just like the way we update bylaws. You want to make sure you meet all the needs and concerns and desires of a community today versus 25 years ago.
And try to think ahead a little bit.
Yeah. And then during that, you can have a lot of fun with that one meeting, and you had mentioned that you had a different name for it, but during this process, we invite a lot of people to a big community input sort of, yeah. That can be a lot of, 20, 30, 40 people, and what you do is, it's just that one time. It's the committee and all these people, and what you do is you just throw ideas around to see what they come up with in terms of different areas.
See what sticks to the wall?
Yeah, well, you get some really interesting stuff at those meetings. And last comma, I didn't know if we want to expand it a bit, because we didn't have anybody from the Historic Commission or the Cultural Council on there.
Oh, yeah.
Don't know if you want to add those. Some communities will add a representative from Police, Fire, and Highway. They usually have a lot to say about a lot of these issues. That's a possibility, or you can just invite them to the larger meeting, if you'd like. That would be more appropriate, so I'd leave that to the board, what you think is appropriate.
They'd probably have a tough time. I don't know how many meetings it would be, but they'd probably have a tough time getting someone to attend every single one.
Got it. Yeah, there's certainly stakeholders in the town.
Yeah.
Certainly, but we can probably work them in at some stage.
Like request a statement maybe, or, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure one of the chiefs would just do it, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if they would have the time to get involved in every one of the meetings.
Yeah, they're pretty busy.
I got Bob Manerick to commit as a member of the Economic Development Committee. He's the only member right now.
Yeah.
So
that was an easy one.
So that's it. I just would like to get the ball rolling, and
I got March 6th or March 20th.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Let us know.
Okay.
If I could say this something, we got taken to task a little bit on the site visits. I came into your office and I was hoping that there could be a site walk for the Blue Wave, led by somebody. I don't want to walk out there alone and,
I should recuse myself.
It's fine, Mike, but you walk out there alone, it'd be nice to have, either an engineer or somebody who knows the site. The foreman is fine, but I think it would be good to bounce things off as we're out there. I don't want to be, you're in there in a vacuum, and you don't necessarily know what you're looking at. You need a map, a plan.
Yeah, I think our decision requires 24 hours notice for any
Right,
planning
but
board.
I want to go. I just felt.
So we just can't all go.
No, but I felt, saying, have you been out there? And I'm like, I want to, and I reached out. So let's see if we can do
You
this.
say that, but years ago, that's why I volunteered for the board. I had the whole COMCOM committee walking down my.
Yeah, I thought we
property
could
on
all
site
do that.
plan.
It's not a meeting, it's a sidewalk.
I think you just have to post it, don't you?
Yes,
It's a
you
quorum.
have to post.
You can post it.
Yeah.
We can all go, yes, but it just has to be a posted.
I think we should try to all go or half go or at 2 times.
As many as convenient.
Yeah, I mean,
How
I
about
can
this
go
Saturday, if possible?
early,
God, early.
like 8:30 or something.
I might be working.
Well, I start at 10, so
Yeah.
I can't. I got to be there 9:30, actually.
It's going to be raining. No.
Saturday's going to be beautiful.
Saturday's clear, that's why I might be working.
Sunday.
Yeah. Matt, if you can pull it together, I'll go, and whoever else wants to go on Saturday.
Try to set that up.
8 a.m., 8:30, is 8 so bad?
I'd encourage you to not.
Really bad.
8:30? A little better?
I'll go anytime, I don't care.
But yeah, if you two want to go, he make the request, and you two can go.
Right, whoever else can go.
But if it's just you two, we don't need to post a meeting.
It's fine. Yeah, I don't care.
But I'm unavailable, you can't go.
I can't go.
Mike, do you? Mike can't go.
So it's on the record, I recuse myself from the
Yes.
sidewalk.
Yeah.
Would it be more beneficial if we did another day and time so others can go? Or,
I have a very tough, busy schedule,
Okay,
but
sure.
like, if I can get it, I can go, but like, I might, maybe I'll arrange something with Meg to go one time, you know?
Yeah, through the chair, I don't have any issue going. I guess my issue has been, what am I going to add to the conversation? Because conservation is out there, the engineers are out there,
You are correct.
You know.
It's checking a box for the, we've been asked.
See the picture.
No,
I hear you.
and so I'm fine going. That's fine. I just, I don't know that that's going to help further their concerns, I think.
if I could, through the chair, my experience is it's very informative. You can look at two-dimensional paper till the cows come home, and sometimes it's just not going to do it for you to go out there and see that site for yourself.
Take your breath away.
As long as someone is there who can describe to me what I am looking at,
Right.
you know, that's my
I would hope most of
concern.
it's self-evident, but
Yeah, if you want to set that up for
I
Saturday
don't
morning, and
know
if
that it is.
2, possibly 3 can go, then.
3 can go.
Yeah, good.
3's not a quorum, so that works.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion
Second.
made by Mr. Zwicker, seconded by most of the panel. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
I thought